In 2019, after the school lockdown, I was happy. Happy because I was free. The very next day, I was chilling on my bed, resting on a comfy pillow, enjoying my cell phone and watching YouTube videos. I had no idea that my very first day of freedom would turn into a horrifying experience. Our home was empty except for my mother, my sister, and me. That evening, I was sitting in my room on the ground floor when my sister came in and casually mentioned that they were going to the rooftop. I barely nodded, my eyes glued to my phone. After some time, the silence started to feel unnatural. A strange, uneasy sensation crept over me. Just as I began to acknowledge that uneasy feeling, the lights abruptly went out. Load shedding. I gripped my phone tighter, using its torch to slice through the sudden darkness. Suddenly, I felt something crawling under my skin, like icy fingers creeping through my ribs. My heart pounded wildly and I jumped up, my eyes wide with terror. In a frantic panic, I tore off my shirt, convinced that something was inside, but there was nothing. I stared at my own goosebumps, shivering with fear. Feeling dizzy, I bent down to pick up my phone, but the vertigo hit me like a wave, and I collapsed onto the bed. My mind was spinning, trying to make sense of what was happening. My heart thudded in my ears. Then out of nowhere, a loud crashing sound. It came from the kitchen, sending a shockwave of terror through me. I froze, unable to call out. My throat felt tight, strangled by fear. Shame and helplessness washed over me as I tried to summon the courage to move. I finally forced myself to step out of the room, only to see a small mouse scurry out of the kitchen. I let out a shaky breath, my hands trembling. I slowly made my way up the stairs to the rooftop, desperate to reach my family. As I reached the top, the lights came back on. Relief washed over me like a warm blanket, and I took a deep breath. Just as I turned to go back downstairs, I stopped in my tracks. The hall looked unnaturally still, ominously quiet. I descended the stairs cautiously, every step feeling heavier than the last. Suddenly, the lights went out again. I froze, staring into the dark hall, and that's when I saw it, a shadow standing motionless in the middle of the room. My heart dropped. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Fear rooted me to the spot. Everything went black. When I regained consciousness, I found myself lying on the floor with my mother sitting beside me. She looked at me with concern, but I couldn't bring myself to explain. I couldn't tell her about the shadow or how real it felt. What had really happened? Had I just imagined it? Or was there something more sinister lurking in the dark? My friend and I went to the school during the lockdown period. We didn't know that the government had announced the holidays. We thought we would pass the time while doing work, but we never imagined in our life what happened to us there. I entered the school as usual. There was no security guard, and the atmosphere felt cold and eerie. Inside, the lights were off, and the school was unusually clean. The strong scent of the freshly sanitized floor lingered in the air. A shiver ran down my spine, but I brushed it off as paranoia. We headed to our classroom, sat down, and started reading books, revising older concepts to pass the time. The silence around us was unnerving, almost as if the school itself was holding its breath. Time slipped by, and still nobody came. We exchanged uneasy glances, starting to feel that something was off. Growing more suspicious, we decided to step out and see what was going on. As we reached the main gate, our hearts sank. It was locked. We pushed and pulled, shouted for help, but the whole place was silent. Too silent. Panic started to creep in. My friend tried to laugh it off, but his voice sounded shaky. We felt trapped. Suddenly, a faint rhythmic sound echoed from the basement. It sounded like someone working, maybe hammering or dragging something heavy. We looked at each other, relief washing over us. Maybe a janitor was downstairs fixing something. Trying to calm our nerves, we walked down the dimly lit staircase, our footsteps echoing off the cold, hard walls. At the bottom, we noticed a single flickering light coming from the room where the wires were kept. As we approached, the sound grew louder, almost like something scraping against metal. We hesitated for a moment, but convinced ourselves that it was just maintenance work. I pushed the door open, but nothing. The room was completely empty. The sound stopped abruptly. My heart pounded in my ears and a cold chill settled in the pit of my stomach. My friend tried to rationalize it. Maybe some mice ran off when we opened the door. he whispered, forcing a nervous smile. But before we could take another step, bang! The basement door behind us slammed shut and then creaked open again. We froze, our breaths caught in our throats. I could hear my heartbeat thundering in my chest. There was no wind, nothing that could have moved the door. I could feel the goosebumps rising on my arms, cold sweat trickling down my back. My friend moved closer, his face pale. I tried to gather my courage and walk toward the basement entrance, calling out cautiously, but there was no response, just that heavy, suffocating silence. Suddenly, I heard something else, a faint murmur, like women whispering. I turned to my friend, but he looked confused. He didn't seem to hear it. The whispers grew louder, echoing through the dark corridor. My hands trembled, and I could feel fear tightening around my chest. Without warning, a cold breeze swept past us, carrying with it the faint scent of something rotten. I could hardly breathe. Desperate to escape, we bolted up the stairs, not daring to look back. The school, once familiar and safe, now felt like a dark, twisted maze. When we finally reached the gate, click! The gate slowly swung open, and standing there were our parents and the security guards, looking worried. Relief washed over me so intensely that I could barely stand. We tried to explain what happened, but no one believed us. They said the school had been locked since the holidays began. Even now, 6 years later, I still wonder what truly happened that day. Was it just our imagination? A shared illusion? In 2023, my school in Fresno gave us holidays. It felt almost like a lockdown since the school was abruptly closed. The reason? A boy had mysteriously gone missing. The guards insisted that he never left the premises, as the electric attendance machine installed at the entrance had no record of his exit. Panic spread like wildfire. Parents were furious, blaming the school and protesting outside the gates. To calm the chaos, the school declared holidays. Little did we know that the truth behind it all would be far more shocking than we could ever imagine. I was part of the boys' search team. Being one of the oldest students, my friends and I, guided by a teacher, joined the effort. Our school was enormous, with countless small blocks scattered across the campus. While others combed the trees, bushes, and classrooms, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were searching in vain. After all, if he were out in the open, someone would have found him by now. I discussed my thoughts with my friends, and we decided to head to the principal's office to get a school map. Even though I had been at that school for almost a decade, staring at the map made me realize how unfamiliar the place still felt. The principal was strict about the confidentiality of the map, warning us not to take any pictures, but I couldn't resist. I discreetly snapped a few photos, intending to delete them later. Hours passed as I scrutinized the map, a nagging emptiness gnawing at my mind. Then suddenly I noticed something that made my heart pound, a hidden room marked in the basement. When I asked a guard about it, he hesitated, then whispered that nobody was allowed in that room. Nobody knew what was inside. Intrigued, I told one of my friends and we set off toward the basement. It lay beneath the old hostel, which had been abandoned after a tragic incident where a boy had fallen from the third floor to his death. The hostel looked as if it had been swallowed by time. Darkness cloaked the area, and tangled roots had erupted through the soil. The ground was slick with algae, and dense bushes had overtaken the entrance. The air was thick with decay and silence, broken only by the rustle of leaves in the wind. I slipped through a broken window into one of the hostel rooms, and immediately a wave of dread washed over me. A thin beam of sunlight pierced the cracked wall, illuminating dust dancing in the air. The roots had crawled into the room, tangling with the moldy beds. The stench was suffocating. Suddenly, bang! A rusted metal clock fell from the wall, crashing to the floor. My heart leapt to my throat. For a moment I was paralyzed by fear, convinced that something unnatural was lurking in the shadows. My friend's voice broke the spell, calling from outside. "Hey, what are you doing in there? Hurry up!" I scrambled out the window, forcing my breathing to slow. We checked other rooms, but they were just as empty and eerie. As darkness settled in, we descended into the basement. The heavy door creaked open, revealing a narrow, damp hallway where water dripped from rusty pipes. Shadows stretched like long, clawed fingers, and the smell of rot intensified. We switched on our flashlights, but even their beams seemed swallowed by the gloom. My heart pounded, but something inside me compelled me to press on, as if a force was guiding me deeper into the darkness. After wandering through the maze-like corridors, we found it, the hidden room. The door was corroded and covered in algae, its hinges barely holding on. As I reached for the handle, a gut-wrenching cry echoed through the corridor. My flashlight flickered, plunging us into momentary darkness. Terror coursed through my veins. Summoning every ounce of courage, I pushed the door open. My blood froze. Inside the dimly lit room was a grave, and on it sat the missing boy. His face was a mask of anguish, blood smeared across his cheeks, nails broken and raw. When he lifted his head, his eyes were hollow and empty. Without warning, he lunged at me, screaming in pain and fury. We barely managed to slam the door shut as he banged against it, relentless and wild. We raced upstairs, yelling for help. Guards and paramedics arrived, dragging the boy from the basement. They said he was the younger brother of the boy who had died in that hostel years ago. Some whispered that after his brother's death, his parents too heartbroken to claim his body. To this day, no one knows the full truth. The hostel was eventually demolished,